I was coming home. The country I grew up in was changing. 24 hand grenade attacks in Malmö. 3 murders in the first 2 weeks of 2017, giving an annual murder rate higher than South Africa. Projections indicate Swedes could be a minority in their own country by 2040. The consequences are profound. The Swedish model of highly qualified individuals working in a high-trust environment, willing to pay taxes for a welfare state, is being jeopardized. Not to mention the threat to Swedish culture. Astrid Lindgren, women's rights, dancing around the midsummer pole. Will that survive in a country where Swedes are less than majority? And what about the Swedish language? Swedish people support nationalism in Estonia and the Ukraine, and in the past, the newly decolonized states of Africa and Asia. Only the Swedes must not be allowed to love their own country.
You can't sell to Eastern Europeans this multicultural happiness because they were living many hundred years and was bleeding and suffering with all this.
Det som händer i svenska media liknar mycket den kommunistiska media i gamla Polen, i den kommunistiska Polen.
Både i DDR till exempel och i Ryssland tog man och fängslade människor.
Ja.
Men här förlorar folket jobb.
Ja.
We're interested in fact-checking and all that kind of stuff. So to the extent that goes against the Swedish brand, I mean, we have a problem.
We have cases where research articles have been removed from the university databases because they are uncomfortable with regard to official state policy.
So what we are witnessing is actually something probably far more majestic than, the end of the Enlightenment. We might actually witness the end of, society as we know it.
There's a state that's utterly free.
Sweden's a country that's a very successful brand. It sells itself on prosperity, advanced technology, and socially progressive values. It all makes for a very successful picture, which the rest of the world largely buys. But is that really the whole story? What we're going to do is peer behind the facade, beyond the image that Sweden projects to the outside world. It's a country where the elite is very powerful, and they push through an ideology at all costs that includes multiculturalism and mass immigration, over the heads of what the little people think. Mass immigration might not work, and even if it did work, it would change Sweden beyond recognition. The fact is, most people did not vote for it. It's been imposed from above.
att leva på bidrag och leva i segregerade bostadsområden. Det är ingenting som Malmö mår bra av. Titta här på Möllevångstorget med alla de olika nationaliteter som präglar detta torg och butikerna runt omkring. Det är verkligen en internationell atmosfär av allra bästa märke. Möllevångstorget representerar just den sortens framtidsmalmö. Dessutom med en mycket väl fungerande marknadsekonomi på torget som vi moderater vill ha.
Välkommen kära kunder. 21 kronor om du har. Om man inte har då? 20 kronor jämt, okej, efter det så ser.
Swedish authorities have their hands full in the southern city of Malmö with an explosion of Muslim immigrants. 90% of them unemployed, many angry, taking it out on the country that took them in.
If we park our car, that will be damaged. So we have to go very often 2 vehicles. One just to protect the other vehicle and so on.
Fear of violence has changed the way police, firemen, and emergency workers do their jobs. There are some neighborhoods these Swedish ambulance drivers do not go into without a police escort. They've come under threat from angry crowds who tell them which patients to take, which patients to leave behind. The most liberal asylum laws in Europe mean a city of 250,000 is now 1/4 Muslim, changing the face and the idea of what it means to be Swedish. Asylum seekers may bring spouses, brothers, grandparents. Civil servants say the city is swamped.
So you have 1,000 pupils in a Swedish school?
Yeah.
How many are Swedes?
2.
The beauty about Sweden is the emptiness. Feeling a neutron bomb or some poison gas has taken out all the population, and you get these nice empty modernist places. I really appreciate it. These pictures are juxtaposed. Malmö, literally that skyscraper outside that were above us, and Manhattan. They feel that they are part of the transmutation process of a city that is becoming almost like the world's greatest city. I mean, just give it some time. Why can't Malmö be good at being Malmö, and Sweden be good at being Sweden, and let New York be New York, instead of being a third-rate copy? When I grew up, Malmö was a working-class town. It had a huge harbour which imported things from around the world. Later, Malmö had Europe's largest shipyard, Kockums, which employed a large proportion of the city's male population and gave Malmö a firmly working-class flavour. In the socialist Sweden in the 1970s, the trade unions were very strong. So was the workers' movement, especially in that cradle of Swedish industrialism, Malmö. In the 1980s, however, the shipyard closed due to competition from the Far East. The city went into economic decline. Then the bridge to the continent was built. It was one of Europe's longest. Everyone hoped it would signal an economic turnaround. There was a construction boom. As the old harbour was gentrified, and new flats and high-rises were built. Malmö took in short order, large numbers of immigrants from the Middle East and Africa. It was supposed to be dynamic, young, the new face of the city that aimed to be the innovation hub of the 21st century. This is Malmö 1 rather than Malmö 2. This is sort of multiculturalism at work, the positive side. The arrival of these outdoor bars, which was unseen before because of various regulations, and which made Sweden seem so much more East European and communist than Denmark or Germany or Holland. They marked a break with that past, and sort of heralded a more open Sweden, and I think many young Swedes, when they sit here on a Saturday night, they think multiculturalism is just like a big bar or something. They sort of think, well, what's it going to lead to? What's the realities?
Jag filmar i skola. Är detta Malmös bästa skola?
Nej.
Är det inte?
Detta är Malmös sämsta skola.
Är det det? Varför det då?
För att jag tycker det.
5 different students. They have no connection to each other whatsoever, and they have all told me about the problems that they experience every day, especially when it's the Ramadan and the Muslim time for prayers and so on. That the other families go together and start getting involved. It's like they own them. They feel like we don't own ourselves. They own us. They take responsibility over my children. If I want my daughter to like play with this child or this child, all of a sudden you have families coming over and tell them, no, this girl is not good for you. This girl is not, and your daughter has to do this. And they also control them. Are your sons going to the Friday prayers and so on? And they don't necessarily have to have the hijab on, but if they do and they take it off, they can't take it off. So one of them said that I can't take off my hijab even though I wanted to. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of interest in getting integrated in Sweden, or even having their children getting integrated. Because I worked in a school at Sofrunskolan, which is connected to that area, and I know we had lots of problems with their children. When we had school endings and we were in the church, they wouldn't let them go. And when we had Swedish traditions, no, they wouldn't let them involve.
Are there worries that some people fought in the war and have sort of blood on their hands or done bad things?
I have students that have told me that there are lots of people who do sympathize with ISIS and so on that are here. They don't tell us who they are, but they know about that. They know more than they can tell us.
Det finns ingen väg tillbaka.
Sverige blir aldrig som det varit.
Europa är i förändring och Sverige behövs som en trygg plats för människor på flykt.
Nu måste vi söka vägar framåt och hitta ett sätt för alla att leva tillsammans.
Det är dags att inse att nya svenskar kommer att ta plats.
Med kultur, språk och vanor.
Och det är dags att se det som en positiv kraft.
Att vara svensk måste få vara mer än hudfärg och födelseort.
Det måste få vara du, jag och alla tillsammans.
Det är inte bara nya svenskar som ska integreras.
Alla behöver integreras, även etablerade svenskar.
Integration handlar om ömsesidighet.
Låt oss skapa en framtid
som bygger på lika delar realitet och framtidstro.
Låt oss bygga ett land
där vi sätter hat och rädsla åt sidan.
Vi har alla det nya landet inom oss.
I våra synsätt, tankar och handlingar.
Det är dags att vi tillsammans formar ett land
som är stolt, inkluderande och hållbart.
Något nytt. Det nya landet.
Rustan is a booster of the new Sweden. Totally buys into the official opinion. Tycker du att Sverige borde ta in fler invandrare än vad det gör redan?
Vi har plats för otroligt mycket mer folk här. Och det är en begåvningsreserv. Ja, det är bara att titta på befolkningspyramiden, hur den ser ut. Vi blir allt fler äldre människor som behöver hjälp och stöd på olika sätt när man blir lite gammal och skröplig. Men det förutsätter ju att det hela tiden föds nya människor. Att vi blir mer medborgare i basen på den här pyramiden. Ju. De så kallade bidragen som de får ju. Vad gör de med det? Jo, de går ju till affären och handlar. Det innebär det att handlarna i butikerna här, de får ju tillbaka de pengarna ju.
Ser inte du en parallell att om det skulle komma 2 miljoner invandrare till Sverige, eller 3 miljoner eller 4 miljoner, då skulle ju svenskan inte längre vara ett självklart språk på gatorna. Och det är ju, Sverige skulle bli ett helt annat samhälle. Jag menar, kanske det kommer den poängen där, kommer till den tillfället där svenskarna kommer vara i den positionen som esterna var på 80-talet. Det vill säga ett litet land som kanske inte kunde garantera sin kultur längre.
Ja, men då är det ju också frågan om vad är det för kultur som är svensk i sammanhanget. Kåldolmar, spaghetti och så vidare. Väldigt mycket utav det som vi tar som typiskt svenskt, det har ju importerats en gång i tiden i små portioner. Ju. Hur bra vi än har det så finns det människor som råkar illa ut. Och då är det frågan om hur vi ska hjälpa dem på olika sätt. Ju. Måste de vara kvar i sitt elände? Eller kan man på olika sätt hjälpa och stödja dem och ge dem en möjlighet att förändra sitt liv i positiv riktning? Och ja, det är basen helt enkelt.
But not everyone agrees with Rustan. Skeptics need not apply, however. There is huge ostracization of those who do not go along with this multiculturalism project. It seems that this cool new Malmö package does not include the freedom to dissent. Nima Ghulam Alipour is an Iranian who is an elected politician at the local level for the Sweden Democrat Party. The Sweden Democrats describe themselves as social conservatives. They're also the only party that is opposed to the mass immigration project which is changing Sweden. As a result, they're completely demonized and excoriated by the mainstream politicians, as well as the media and the professional classes. But Nima represents the views of the little people. He spoke to us in a cafe and described how local politicians treat him.
They try to put us out of the committees by making them smaller. Right. That's one of the things they have done in Malmö. So if you have a committee that are 9 members, they make it 7 members, so we don't get in. And when we ask them, why do you do that? No, we have an agreement, and that's how we want to do it. There is no real explanation. In the districts, we have citizen dialogue groups where politicians and citizens converse, and we're not welcome in those groups. So we're the only party that are not welcome in the citizen dialogue groups. there are politicians from all parties. And when we ask them what's the reason for that, we're the third biggest party in Malmö. We have like citizens who want to talk with us, and they say, no, you're not a democratic party.
Do people understand the difference between criticizing immigration and criticizing immigrants? Because
no, that's so painful. You know, going every day and people telling me, "Oh, you're against immigrants." No, you know, I tell them we talk about the immigration policy. That's not being against immigrants. And you know, people tell me crazy stuff. I was out campaigning and people told me, "Oh, why are you with these Sweden Democrats? They hate you." And you know, I said to them like, do you look at us? Does it seem that they hate me, or that we hate each other, or that we hate anybody? And you know, I think it's partly media's fault that we have this distortion that when people think that the immigrants and the immigration policy is the same thing. And where we are now in Sweden, it is at a point where people think that anything but a generous immigration policy or liberal immigration policy is racist. So
Nima's trained as a school teacher, a historian, and ought to be hugely in demand at a time when people are quitting the teaching profession in droves because of insecurity and violence levels in the school system. Unfortunately, because of his political associations, Nima can't get a job anywhere. He has the wrong views.
Well, I'm born in Holland, grew up in Norway. I'm used to speak my mind with no problems, but here in Sweden you can't do that without getting in trouble. If you're not political correct, you get kicked out of your job, organizations.
Do you know of anyone that's happened to?
Yeah, a lot. Like I know a teacher that spoke her mind on Facebook. She got fired. So it's.
What did she say?
No, she was talking negative about the Islamists, not the Muslims, but the Islamists.
But she was not talking negative about Muslims. She was just about Islamists.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but here in Sweden, that's racism.
Okay, right.
That was one of the most difficult part of my professional life here in Sweden. The irritation over that the people don't have courage to present controversial ideas and also the incapable to handle these things in the collective. And for example, in the institutional meetings, it happens often that I had some controversial idea and didn't like the proposed things, and I was arguing and fighting for my ideas, and then you suddenly see that everybody is drinking coffee, looking down in the table, and you are losing the eye contacts because they are some way not comfortable with the situation. Then we put together a little committee, and of course after that people forget the problem and somebody makes some decision somewhere. But that is also when you go out from this meeting at the elevator. There are some people who come to you. It was very good that you said, Irene. Really, you had so right. Huh? You know, this it's very, very strange. You know, this how they can live with this kind of.
How do things get done in this country? I mean, it's a prosperous country. You know.
Well,
Det är hjärntvättning. Det är bara, eller jag ska säga så här. 80% cirka då svenskarna är hjärntvättade redan hur länge som helst det har pågått, och jag har inget svar på det varför man är så jävla dum om man säger så, men 20% de just som röstar på SD och de som ser, de förtrycks just nu.
Ja.
Det är så det är. I Polen förtrycktes inte folket, de visste vad som pågår. Man på något sätt väntade tills det smäller. Men man väntade inte som en jäkla åsna. Ja, det är något fel på svenska folket.
Ja.
Det är det som är det största problemet. Och sen det andra, det är just de 20% som förtrycks. Det är de som är de jävla rasister och nazister och
förtrycks de på ett värre sätt än vad som händer i Polen?
Absolut, det tycker jag. Absolut på värre sätt.
Ja.
Kanske inte just att både i DDR till exempel och i Ryssland tog man och fängslade människor.
Ja.
Men här förlorar folk ett jobb.
Ja.
De kan inte vara med i facket, de får inget jobb. Är det inte samma sak, ursäkta mig?
Kriminaliteten har urartat helt. Det går inte att jämföra 80-90-talet till dagens Malmö. Det slut bryr man sig inte. Alltså om ungdomar som röker i bussar och på kvällarna och bråkar och trakasserar passagerare. Alltså i Polen, de flesta skrattar åt Sverige. Alltså folk vet vad som händer i Sverige och i Europa och Tyskland. Många som flyttar tillbaka till Polen, unga människor som vill stadga sig och bilda familj. De flyttar trots att de har levt bättre i västländer och jobbat och haft det bättre, flyttar ändå tillbaka för att deras barn ska växa upp i vanliga, alltså inte som samhälle som i Tyskland, England och Sverige. Inte det, de tror inte på framtiden i de länderna, alltså vad gäller kultur och värderingar och europeiska värderingar och sånt. De vill inte leva i sånt.
Jag håller med dig.
Alla vet vad som händer i Sverige. Det är svenskarna som inte vet.
Hur ska man hantera folk som inte vill ha mer invandring? Tycker du att Sverigedemokraterna behandlats rättvist?
Ja, problemet är ju här det att det bygger ju på så otroligt mycket okunskap. Ja. Rykten, man hör nu förskräckliga historier om den och den som har kommit. Plötsligt här då så tillskrivs all kriminalitet som överhuvudtaget inträffar i samhället. Det blir plötsligt då invandrare som sköter det, som står för den delen. Nej, man ska vara lite granna skeptisk till de historier som man hör. Och det är ju också polisens egen rapportering. Är det så att det råkar brinna en bil, ja, eftersom de inte då kan direkt förstå att det är ett elektriskt fel som förorsakar branden, ja, då betecknar de som mordbrand. Mordbrand, jaha, nu är det någon sån där vettvillig som är ute i samhället på nytt igen. Jag tror att man måste vara lite noggrannare med sitt val utav beteckning på olika händelser i samhället. För att det skapar och vilseleder ibland människor och tror att vi bor i ett betydligt sämre samhälle än vad vi egentligen bor i.
Men ska man, många är ju inte informerade och är rädda för det nya. Tycker att man ska kalla dem för främlingsfientliga och packa ner på dem som media gör?
Nej, det är ju helt galet ju. Det är ju i regel hyggliga och vänliga människor. Men de har fått en del saker om bakfoten ju.
You could ask yourself, is multiculturalism in favor of social change or not? That is a very important question. And I would say that multiculturalists, as being leftists, defended by people who perceive themselves as being leftists, they have a problem with the idea of social change. Because if all we have to do when we see exotic, quote-unquote exotic cultures, is to recognize these cultures, because that's what also multiculturalism is about. It's about a kind of peaceful, passive recognition of the other and the culture of the other. Then there is an imminent risk that these cultures will not change. And, you know, myself being a modernist, I think there is a problem with this because, and this is a dangerous thing to say, you know, you might jeopardize a lot of things. It's a dangerous thing to say that it might be a good thing for certain cultures to change. And for instance, their approach to women, for instance, their approach to the state, the idea of the state, you know, a transition from the clan or from the tribe to the state, and notions such as freedom of speech, etc. And because if you say this, people, you know, you're asking for trouble because people will tell you, well, so you think you're better than anybody else. Of course I'm not better, but I do think that there are certain cultures who have maybe been able to deal with certain things in a better way than other cultures. You know, if you talk about Jews in Malmö, the official discourse was that the Jews in Malmö were harassed by Swedish neo-Nazis. But if you go to Malmö and have a look, you will not find many neo-Nazis. You know, there might be one or two, but they are not responsible for the fact that the Jews in Malmö have left. Basically, they have left. So the threat, the reason why the Jews in Malmö have left is because they have been attacked by Muslims. Not all Muslims, of course, but Muslim groups and mostly Muslim young men. And you can't say this, even though it is true. So there are certain things you can't say, even though they're true. And there are other things you're free to say, even though they are not true, you know. So what you say as a multiculturalist, you go on saying the right things, which are wrong, but you can say them and you should say them. Because it protects you and it gives you a lot of friends and you can write a lot of articles and everything you say is bogus, but it doesn't matter. So social reality no longer matters. I think England is the best example if you want to talk about the failures of multiculturalism, but I think, save for Sweden, I think Sweden is an even better example. In Sweden, for instance, in academia, you have a hegemonic discourse. And it means that people are afraid to speak up. And this is dangerous. Because then you no longer have a discussion about things. You have people who, like, you know, they wave their finger and they try to find out where the wind is blowing. And then they go in this direction. So you create a situation where people are nervously looking for appeal. They are nervously looking for maximum number of appreciation. And in society, also in politics, you have also a situation where there are a lot of things that you're not allowed to say. And you have, most of all I would say, you have a situation where everything is being polarized. Where you have, and I mean, if you would like to create a situation where you have right-wing fanatics who say all kinds of bizarre things, and then on the other hand you have the multiculturalists who say the opposite things, then you should have a look at the last few years in Sweden, because I think politicians, journalists, and the academia has, whether they know it or not, they have carefully created a situation which is, I would think, on the brink of explosion.
Right. Could you just describe the difference in atmosphere between Germany, where you worked as a postdoc, and Sweden? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so in Germany, I mean, you could, criticize anything and in any way you want. But then when I came back to Sweden here, I mean, I realized that the situation here is quite different. And here, I mean, if you give serious criticism of someone's research here, then you might be in trouble, actually. So that was kind of an awakening for me to coming back to Sweden in that sense. And So I think that also in the UK, I think you have a quite a different academic environment when it comes to the kind of criticism that you can raise. I mean, we have a collegial system where you're supposed to criticize whatever you find objectionable, and I mean, without that, you can't really secure the quality of research and teaching. And so if that component is lacking, I mean, that's a complete failure of the university system, in my view. There are actually severe threats to that kind of academic environment, and that threat is coming from various places. It's coming from new public management, which is management philosophy, which wants to turn the whole academia into some kind of private business. But it also comes from other parts of society. It comes from the government, who wants to implement its own political agendas through top-down governance. So I have all kinds of forces acting precisely in this direction of silencing criticism and making academia less independent. I think that there are certain agendas that Sweden is famous for, and so you have, I mean, the multicultural agenda. You have various agendas in various disciplines, like strangely enough in forestry, you have a particular agenda for promoting the Swedish model of forestry. And there are also other areas. I mean, for instance, when it comes to prostitution, Sweden has a certain position where we are punishing, I mean, buying sexual services, which is also part of the Swedish brand, so to speak.
Where are all the mommies? This is Sweden. We have something called pappaledighet. It's while the daddies stay at home for 6 months while the moms are working.
Next position. One leg moves.
Can you do this?
What?
Oh.
We sent a man to the moon. What a waste, when we could have sent him to the playground as our Swedish sisters do.
Sweden is a very successful brand.
It is, yes.
And sometimes when you see adverts for Volvo or IKEA,
yeah.
they sell it, oh, you British are so conservative, have some Swedish feminism.
Yeah.
And it's like the company and the country sell each other, you know.
Yes.
IKEA relies on
yes,
Sweden,
of course.
Sweden relies on
Yeah.
IKEA,
Yes.
Volvo, and everyone is talking with the same voice.
That's true.
Isn't that a very good success story for Sweden? Everybody loves Sweden. I mean, Sweden has got a fantastic reputation in the world.
Yes, that's true, and we have a very, kind of progressive agenda on all kinds of things. And yes, you're right. I mean, it's many profit from that agenda.
Why air your dark secrets? You know, you'll just make yourself unpopular.
Yes, but you know, in academia, truth is the most important thing. So we are not really interested in what promotes the Swedish brand or the brands of various Swedish companies. We are interested in where the truth lies in various issues, and we're interested in fact checking and all that kind of stuff. So to the extent that goes against the Swedish brand, I mean, we have a problem.
And in a way, the new public management, the universities are now a brand as well.
Yes, exactly.
And do I get the impression that it's difficult for you as a professor to say this, but students are bought on the university brand, and if you have a difficult academic who is, you know, doesn't say the right thing, then that's a problem, and something bad about the media comes up, and then you know, it's easy to drop him rather than protect him.
Of course, yeah.
I heard some strange rumors. My old head of department, well, a friend of mine, she talked to her and she said, well, we don't know if he's a Nazi or not. And my very good friend, she was shocked, and for weeks she didn't say anything to me. And eventually she did, and I said, well, I'm not, you know, but that's not a nice thing to hear. And then they were scaling down, and then I was singled out, you know, very oddly. So I lost my job, and Dean, my faculty, he suddenly made a complete U-turn, and he started attacking me. He said there were lots of problems with me and lots of problems with the students and colleagues, etc. And I said, so give examples, I said. And he couldn't. That was like 3 weeks after my book had appeared. My book was not called A Critique from the Right, a critique against multiculturalism from the right, because if that would have been the title, they would have thrown me out, you know, in no time. The title of my book was A Critique from the Left, and that must have made them very concerned, because the entire Malmö University College rests on the foundation of multiculturalism, as does Malmö, the city of Malmö also has a multicultural foundation. So they must have been pretty uneasy when somebody like me said that you've got it all wrong. This is a Trojan horse. You think multiculturalism is a nicely lefty, progressive, radical idea. It's not. My situation is not unusual, and I have a lot of good colleagues who still work at Malmö University College, and some of them have a hard time because they also question things that you're not allowed to say. They also question things you're not allowed to question.
What technique do your colleagues use in order not to get themselves fired?
Well, one technique is not to think.
We're completely independent politically and ideologically and religiously and so on, you know. And the idea is to defend freedom of speech and academic freedom. The actual cases, they vary. It can vary from individual professors who have been reprimanded by the vice chancellor for some things. Or we have cases where research articles have been removed from the university databases because they are uncomfortable with regard to official state policy. We have communication policies introduced by universities which infringe on the Swedish constitution, especially on the Freedom of Speech Act. Higher education and science can take a very hard blow if it's governed by political ideology too much. We have the bad examples of the Soviet Union and also of Germany in the Nazi period and so on. So there are some lessons saying in order to avoid that from happening, we should have some principles, and they're laid down in UNESCO and they're laid down and Sweden is now moving away from that. So Swedish universities are no longer abiding to the principles set down in UNESCO.
About things that are unorthodox, about opinions that are conservative. And I feel that once the censorship goes to the course material, that's when it becomes really, really dangerous.
I know there will be a lot of different answers, right? But just from what you've said and from the first two chapters that I've read, I feel like there's a certain element of fear that comes with different cultures and how we interact with each other.
When I walk into a space and my personhood is devalued immediately based on my
I was lecturing on John Stuart Mill, and then in the middle of the classroom was this Swedish Muslim convert, all dressed in black, with a white powdered face, and well, that was it. I didn't say anything out of the ordinary. In fact, I was citing John Stuart Mill a few times, and I believe you can do that. Anyway, a few days later, I got pretty unpleasant email, and she finished off by saying the student dressed in her pride, and the email contained, you know, a lot of pretty superficial allegations and misunderstandings of science, and she said I hadn't been neutral, whatever that is. Then I was called up, not once or twice or three times, but 4 times and 5 times to the head of department to talk to this woman and another woman, and this was like a court proceeding, and I was accused, I felt, for having lectured on John Stuart Mill, and I also told them, why am I here? After 8 months, and I think I must have sent about 100 emails, maybe 150 emails, I don't know. I was acquitted. The case was closed, and I was deemed not guilty of defamation, not guilty of discrimination. I was let off the hook, so to speak. And I thought, you know, you took 1,000 hours of my life. What then happened was that she took it to Justitieombudsmannen, which is the highest JO in Sweden. And Justitieombudsmannen is the highest instance in Sweden in terms of cases about discrimination and defamation. And that is actually all I know at present. And the fact that people seem to be so keen to blow these things up out of proportion makes me worried about the situation of free speech in academia. If this goes on, we might end up in a situation where lecturers will no longer talk in front of students because they know that all that is required for a student is to press the red button, and then you have, at best 8 months of allegations against you.
That's good enough.
One of the problems with imposing truth from above by ideology is that reality finally comes and bites you in the back. The Swedish elite have imposed this ideological truth about the multicultural society. But what does reality really look like? The trouble is, the critics are not listened to. A few weeks ago I was contacted by Australian television. I referred them to a guy called Jan Groeneson, who's a former headmaster, debater and editor of an alternative website. He in turn took them out to the suburbs, and there they had a bruising encounter.
For all its generosity, Sweden is now grappling with communities of disaffected migrants who can't find jobs and have few prospects. The country's image was shattered 3 years ago when riots broke out in the Stockholm suburb of Husby. There are now 55 declared no-go zones in Sweden where police have to escort ambulances to ensure their safety.
My cousin lives in Melbourne.
Many locals are polite and friendly and happy to talk.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm very happy.
But what happened next changed everything. The police leave, and as we prepare to go, young men masking their faces arrive.
Good, you're doing good. You're doing good?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Take it easy.
Okay, you too.
And attack.
Go! Mate! Go! Don't you touch me! Okay, we're gonna drink.
Excuse me. Please.
Get out of here.
No, we are leaving, but you don't need to hurt us. There's no need to be unkind. Hey,
You can't film. No, don't do it.
The gang's attention turns when a local intervenes and drives his mobility scooter into the most violent attacker.
Move. We've been individually attacked. Soundman has been punched, the producer's been punched, you've been run over, the cameraman. We've all been assaulted and insulted. It's best we leave.
Svenska medier tycker jag att absolut borde inte uttala sig om andra länders medier och speciellt inte kritisera dem. För det som händer i svenska medier liknar mycket den kommunistiska medier i gamla Polen, i den kommunistiska Polen som störs. Alltså man rapporterar inte hela sanningen, man rapporterar det man vill eller det man blir tillsagt att rapportera. Och det är nästan ingen skillnad nu i Sverige. Alltså det är sån finare på ett fint sätt, men själva mekanismen och roten är samma. Alltså ibland undrar jag om det kanske bara kommunister som sitter i medierna, i alla medier och bestämmer.
Varför diskuterar man aldrig om de grova gruppvåldtäkter som muslimer eller afghaner var det först och sen var det somalier där på färjan från Finland till Sverige. Varför diskuteras inte detta? Utan dels måste man läsa det på alternativa medier. Ja. Varför finns alternativa medier för det första? För hade de andra gjort sitt jobb så hade inte de andra behövts, eller hur?
Vad tycker du om till exempel Sydsvenska Dagbladet, den största tidningen i Malmö?
Vi hade sånt ordspråk i Polen på kommunistiska tider. Ja, men jag har läst det i tidningen. Ja, men den tidningen kan vi torka arslet med.
Do you think Swedish newspapers are quite propagandistic then?
Horrible, at least some of them, like Sydsvenska Dagbladet. Now I went over to the Svenska Dagbladet. It's a little better, probably other level, but it's still, very, very little diversification of things. And I don't know, there is some other newspaper to read, not in Swedish, I think.
No. Sweden has 5 or 6 alternative media newspapers. One is called Avpixlat, which means depixelated. And there's one called the Free Times. And they themselves say, we wouldn't have existed if the real newspapers told the story. Jan Schunnesson, who's the editor of one of them, says that he reports truth and not political correctness. And I think what you would say is that they publish the truth, but they don't publish the whole truth. That is, they don't publish every single angle to the story. So in that sense, they have an agenda. But again, you have to read when the mainstream media call these sites hate sites and that they're propagandistic. Well, they're just as propagandistic, at the very least.
Well, there are 2 ways you can talk about this. The one way is to talk about that we cover stories that the mainstream media don't want to be, they want to touch. It's Islam and it's immigration. There are actual incidents, news that they don't want to pick up.
And why don't they want to pick this up?
Because it distorts the picture of the well-functioning multicultural harmony that we're supposed to have in Sweden. So one thing is that we cover areas that they don't want to cover.
Yeah.
The other problem is that when we cover areas and write about them, they always quote us as only hate speech media or hate media.
Can you just tell us about how some people cried when they talked to you because they felt that they were no longer racists or something like that? What was that story?
Some people who were loyal to what we call the Sweden Democratic Party, and some people who were curious about them, and some people who were just frustrated. And after a few pints and drinks of wine, they gathered, and the woman said, "Jan, could you please lead us in talk about our experiences, how we came to this place, to you, who are the infamous dissident person here, opponent of the government, and we can just tell what we've been through." And some people, women, they cried because they said, "I've been an outcast in my family. My closest friends don't want to talk to me, and here I am, a stranger, and I can finally speak the truth." It was like an evangelical meeting with Pentecostals who were saying, "I met Christ."
Amazing.
They were crying, and the thing was, it was the truth. You look what Mahatma Gandhi said in the 1930s. He coined the slogan Satyagraha. Satya is truth, and Graha is showing the way. Let us be free. So the idea that there is a truth out there. All this internet is fine, and my website and all this, but people need to be able to look each other in the eye and say, my name is this, I work there and there, I've had this experiences, or I had this kind of years because of this crap.
Say what you were going to say about Malmö.
1/4 of the budget in Malmö doesn't come from the taxpayers in Malmö, but all of Sweden holds Malmö under their arms. Malmö can't be the model. It's a test of how bad it will get until the rest of Sweden turns and they can put up sensible policies around the immigration. I don't want it to go bad. I think it's really, really bad now. You have shootings, you have murders. Hand grenades are being thrown into houses in Malmö. This used to be, or is probably something for what you call organized crime, but a lot of people, just Malmö citizens, innocent people, children, women who are walking the streets between these gangs, they've already been killed.
the way that he's always called a hater is just completely unacceptable, and I think it's a real Achilles heel of the way Sweden functions, that he is just automatically dismissed. You always see this example of Eastern Europe coming up, and I always feel that one shoots over the target and loses credibility points when you say it's an East European society, and I've done that many times when I said it's like Soviet Union. It's obviously not like the Soviet Union, but on the other hand, it's not. It's Sweden. There is a slightly autocratic mentality, and you've got to be able to say that and get it exactly right without kicking the ball over the goal, as it were, by saying it's a full-blown autocratic society. And he doesn't want to compare himself to dissident. I mean, all these Václav Havel who spent 10 years in house arrest for writing. I mean, it's not like that, but it's a little bit like that. If people get sacked, if people can't say what they want, if people are afraid of saying what they want on Facebook because of fear that Express and newspapers hacked every single person's internet account in Sweden, which is true, or this amazing fact that a lawyer was told to unfriend a friend who'd liked something that was critical of immigration because the employer, a law firm, had gone through her every single Facebook post and all her friends. That's amazing. That's amazing. There's a huge contrast between my Swedish friends. About half of my Facebook friends are Swedish and half are not. My non-Swedish friends say whatever they like about everything, but Swedish friends say nothing, completely quiet. Allting måste ju passa in, det måste ju vara skola, vård och jobb.
Ja, det är klart det. Men det har väl ingen betydelse var du bygger någonstans?
Jo, men du kan ju inte bygga i ställen där det inte finns jobb.
Det är ju inte det de tar hänsyn till när de placerar folk i Sverige idag. De säger bara att den kommunen sa 800, den sa 400, den sa 200.
Men om de ska permanenta sitt boende i Skara måste ju finnas jobb för dem. De kan inte bara bo, ska de bo på sociala.
Men det är inte något som de bryr sig om på staten. De skickar ut det till kommunerna, de bryr sig inte om de har jobb.
Men du är ju medverkande i detta i så fall.
Jag förstår inte vad du pratar om.
Jo, men
Jag kan inte ta hänsyn till om det finns jobb eller ej. Det måste stan göra.
ja, men i så fall är det ett gemensamma fel.
Ja, det är klart. Det är klart det. Bert? Va? Vad har de gjort? Ja, det är inte klokt. Nu skickar vi till civilminister. Ja. 430. 430 per dygn blir det.